As I was reminded of something I remember thinking, 20 years ago, that you specifically, and of course the faculty here at Trinity, but also the parents, they did their best to walk the walk. It wasn't a just mouth service of, we're a Christian school and we do this, and you can come if you want. Everybody that we encountered in those years that we were here, from the early years throughout, really walked the walk. They certainly did their best. And not to say there weren't shortcomings, of course there were, but it was always centered and directed towards this is our best under this direction and with this intent. And that was always refreshing. And when we came, I didn't know what a lot of the classical terminology was. I learned what a syllogism is, and a word that I use frequently now whenever I can.
Looking back on 25 years brings countless stories, particularly stories of lives deeply impacted. Students and families came to Trinity who not only experienced its education and community, but helped shape them along the way. Today's conversation shares just a few of those stories as we hear from alumni parents Greg Wolf and Cathy MacAdam about their journey to Trinity in its early days and how that decision has continued to bear fruit to this day. Welcome to Different by Design. Thank you for joining us today on Different by Design. I'm your host, Matt Dixon, along with Trinity's founder and head of school, Liz Caddow. And today we continue in our celebration of 25 years of God's faithfulness. And we have the privilege of hearing from a couple of our alumni parents, families who in times past have walked this journey and walked through a Trinity education and what this can mean for a family and for their students. And so I know they can speak firsthand about Trinity's lasting impact. And so today we're welcoming Greg Wolf and Cathy MacAdam to the podcast. And before I introduce them or let them talk, Liz, maybe you could share a little bit about why you wanted them in this conversation.
Oh, well, very good. Thank you. I'm excited for this morning. And thank you, Greg and Cathy, for being here today. And as always, Dr. Dixon, for leading our time this morning. Gosh, what a joy and privilege it has been to know both of you, for so many years now, and the journey that we shared together as parents, being part of our school. Cathy, at one point, serving on our board team. Greg, serving now. Your children. There's so many reasons why I was hopeful and grateful that we could join together this morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you very much for having us, Liz.
Yeah, well, Greg and Cathy, I think before we really kind of get into maybe some questions this morning, I'd love for both of you to be able to share about your respective families, your time at Trinity a little bit, and maybe just what your kids are up to now.
Yes, Greg Wolf, and my wife, Cathy, actually was the one who found Trinity Classical Academy through a neighbor, actually, who was thinking and contemplating of coming to Trinity. And we came to an information night and heard what the school is about, and was very impressed based on what we had experienced in education otherwise. But just a little background, our family, our oldest is Grant, and he joined Trinity in fourth grade, was in public school in fourth grade and came over here in that time frame. And then our middle son, Zechariah, he came as a kindergarten. And same thing with our third son, Chapman, and he came in kindergarten as well. And they all three graduated and went on to college. Grant went on to SMU, as did Zechariah, and Grant was a finance major and music major, double major, and Zach was a computer science major and received his bachelor's and then also stayed on for his master's. And then Chapman graduated from Trinity and went to the Air Force Academy and is graduated from the Air Force Academy, is now in waiting for pilot training.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's
Great, very impressive and lovely wife and sons.
Yes.
I know them and they're lovely. Cathy MacAdam, thank you again, Liz and Matt, for having me on. My 4 children attended Trinity. My oldest son, Donnie, came in 4th grade as well and graduated. And then my daughter, Lizzie, came in 2nd grade. And my son, Angus, came in 1st grade. And my youngest, Mary, was a kindergartner and went all the way through, and they all finished their college careers and with a whole bucket full of degrees and fancy education things, and largely due to the preparation Trinity provided them, and grateful for that. And my oldest daughter, Lizzie, is married to a lovely, lovely young man, and they reside in Spokane, Washington. My son, Angus, is a commercial arborist in Colorado. And
It's a good word.
Fancy word.
Yeah.
And he has a lovely fiance. And my youngest daughter, Mary, is a hard-working social worker in downtown Los Angeles, and very happy there as well. Thank you.
That's great.
Well,
Did you
and
talk about Donnie?
Donnie.
Goodness. Donnie the Great. Oh my gosh. Liz kept trying to cue me like,
Do you have any other children?
I do. My oldest son, Donnie, I'm most proud of him. He is a teacher here at Trinity, and so grateful for that as well, and loves it, and just is so fortunate to be here and truly loves his work and being here.
Which is really fun because, Liz often shares, and whether here in person or on podcasts or anything like that, I know one of her favorite phrases is it takes the whole time. We're talking about educating a child. And I remember when I first started and Donnie was in 8th grade, and no one would have guessed that 8th grade Donnie would one day be teaching here at Trinity. Is that a fair statement?
Perhaps, but I suspect 8th grade Matt looked
Same.
different than
If you ask any of my 8th grade
Absolutely.
teachers,
and 8th
same.
grade
I know.
Kathy and Liz and Greg all look different. But,
Well,
Absolutely.
One of my other favorite phrases that I had grabbed from my master teacher when I was student teaching was, "Don't judge a book by its 13-year-old cover."
yeah,
And
amen.
it's true every time.
Very
and
well.
when we think about our 25 years and just certain memories that are burned into my heart and mind, is both of my meetings with your families, like meeting your family for the first time outside of that little SDA, Seventh-day Adventist makeshift office we had. And then
The
Cathy,
chair. I think it was a bar stool swivel chair in a hut.
Yes, very close to that. And Cathy, the meeting with you, literally Lily, our third, was, I don't even think, a
Weeks
week and a
old.
half
Yeah,
old
not even.
at the park, because we used to do a Thanksgiving feast when our school was smaller at the park. And that,
All 7 people.
it was just a
was
habit
more
of
than
fun.
7.
Yes.
But not much, but it
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
more
it
than
was
7.
Yeah.
It was. And I
Well, through
remember
4th
that.
grade.
I remember that. Well, yes, it was.
Because Donnie
And-
was coming.
And I remember that meeting so well. My husband and I and Donnie dressed up. I told Donnie, put a sports coat on, and we're going. And Don put a suit on, and we traipsed over to that park and sat and had such a meaningful, lovely, instantaneous meeting, and just loved it.
Well, that was our family interview.
Yeah. Wasn't as maybe formal as now.
No,
But the heart of it is the same.
correct.
And that's
That's a good
knowing
way
the
of saying
families
it.
and knowing the people, because the people matter.
Absolutely.
Well, both of you kind of shared pieces of this story, but I would love it if you could share maybe what first drew your family to a place like Trinity for your children's education, but really, I think you both know now, and maybe you knew a little bit then too. It was really more than that. It was the communal aspect for your entire family. What was the draw? What brought you here?
Well, what drew us here, I had an employee who was one of the founding families, and she had been talking about this new upstart school, and I thought she was absolutely crazy. I'm like, what are you doing with your children? And then there was a change in the public school system at the time, and the class sizes changed, and that brought about an immediate attention on my husband and my part to think, we can't put our children in a class of 42 students. You have crowd control versus true education, and in a situation that we had formerly been very happy at. But so we began looking, and I had heard this employee talk about Trinity, and I knew in my heart I was going to make a change, and it was just going to be where. And so we met with Liz, as she said, and in very short order came over all of the 3 then school-age children, and then ultimately our 4th, Mary, came as well when she became of age. But I will say this, Matt, one of the things we thought about in preparing for this podcast was, how did Trinity, being at Trinity, impact your life and change your life? for our family's sake, we were not looking for a life change. We thought we were doing an education switch. We were committed in our faith. We were on that journey and very situated in that. So we were not looking for that. However, it was such an impactful the Trinity experience from the moment we started throughout our entire time here. The emphasis on Christ and a Christ-centered life so impacted our family, to a family that wasn't looking for that, and helped focus and direct our life in every way, our adult lives as parents, certainly our children's lives, and the matters we talked about, the way we approach things, secular and educational things. We're very, very impacted by Trinity. And so the education was kind of a bonus. It turned out to be the cultural experience, the enrichment of the community, and certainly the directedness of our faith-centered life direction was certainly impacted by Trinity.
Great.
And that's our family experience too, Cathy. That's exactly the genesis of why we made a decision to migrate from public school education for our children. We were actually very content with the education model. We did, however, start to see some cultural shifts, some things that were in conflict with what Cathy, my wife, and I had experienced in our own public school education, and it wasn't in alignment with our values. And so therefore we were on a journey and looking, but we were in a very brand new shiny school with basketball courts and everything like that. And when we came to Trinity, it was very much of a very ground up, get your hands dirty, get involved, and be a part of something. And that was really attractive to us because we felt like there was such intentionality on the part of not only Liz, but on the part of all of the faculty. Everybody had signed on for the mission, and there was such a level of personal commitment and personal devotion to not only the heart and minds of our students, but to each other and to that community, and building a community and building something unique and different. And that was very much a draw for us. And I honestly, when we went to a first Vision Night meeting with Liz, I had never heard anybody speak about education. In my experience or in any other, my parents around the dinner table, we'd never heard anybody speak about education and classical Christian education specifically, and didn't understand that. Yet I had caught wind of it a little bit, because that's how my mother had education, and understanding what had happened in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and the transition to the current curriculum and the progressive, continuing to progress education model in the public schools. And so that was something that we were questioning and just wondering about. And I think also class size was something. And even to the point where we actually had enrolled in Trinity and were planning to go that fall, but we had also enrolled in public school. And we went back and went to a class, and there was 34 jumping around people, little people in fourth grade, and it was crowd control, like you said. And then we came to Trinity, and there was order, and there was collective purpose.
And intentionality, as you say. Yeah.
And so that was a big draw for us.
You guys both have alluded to this in some ways, but I was wondering if you could speak more to when you first started some more of the cultural pieces of our school. And here's why even I think it's worth sharing, but honestly, I even love to know these things because while I've been here a while, I remember past campuses and all of that type of stuff. I definitely wasn't a parent at the time, but also as Trinity continues to grow and mature, I think it's worthwhile to look back and to remember the heart and remember the things that made and make Trinity what it is, to ensure that even if the building looks different, even as the faculty might change a little bit here and there, we might have a different table or a different gathering place, but the mission remains the same and the heart remains the same. And so I think, honestly, stories like yours help us to remember and to help us capture, to ensure that those things do remain for years to come as Trinity continues on in that mission. So maybe, I don't know if those are early examples or early stories, but just what was that culture like? What did that feel like for your children, for your family across the board?
For us, it was the culture of collaboration. And I think that was really key in our understanding of how this was different, how this education was different. It was parental involvement and engagement. It wasn't drive-by education. It wasn't you drop your kid off in the morning and you pick them up in the afternoon. How was your day? And that's it. It was engagement, and it allowed parents, it allowed us as parents to be able to engage at a deeper level with our children, because we were being informed about what they were learning outside of what they were telling us, because we were coming to vision night, dedication night, other things that were helping us to understand what is this classical Christian education that our children are involved with. And the opportunities that I remember for our family were that we were all in it together. So there were people who had music skills, and they brought those skills and started an orchestra. There were people who had coaching skills or coaching experience, and they started a sports team. Hey, I'm a soccer coach. I'm a football coach. And it was all parent driven. It was from the ground up. And then there were people who had field trip coordination. My wife got a bunch of 6 or 8 field trips that we still do to this day, to the Reagan Ranch, to the tall ships in Dana Point. So those kinds of things where parents were able to use their creativity, their talents to bring those to serve the greater community. And we felt like we were part of something, instead of being just that education is left to the professionals and the parents are kind of on the outside watching and hoping. And it was very much engagement, involvement, culture of collaboration, and an ability for us to serve one another.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because that still is our hope related to our parent partnership and what we speak life into regarding, hey, we need some coaches. We need people participating and being with us. And I think those early years help shape what we are still seeing now in our parents. And a phrase we always still say is, parents are always welcome. Don't share with us what you do or what your passions are, because we'll put you to work, type of thing. I mean, very much so.
And I think it's important for people to know that heart from everything that you're sharing isn't because, we're short on people.
No.
And it's not born out of this I hope this can go and we really don't have anyone to do it. I mean, that will happen at times and in certain cases, but generally speaking, it's because it's a heart of how can families be involved.
Yes.
This is not a community that we're looking for drop off and, peace out, we'll see you later. How can families engage in what's going on here? Because this is a community.
Yes.
And education is communal in that sense.
I couldn't agree with you more. Liz, I was so glad to hear you say parents are always welcome, because I know that was certainly the spirit of when Greg and I were here, and some of that was necessity, as Greg said, but you mean it. And one of the things that came to mind when you were talking, Liz, I was reminded of something I remember thinking 20 years ago, that you specifically, and of course the faculty here at Trinity, but also the parents, they did their best to walk the walk. It wasn't a just mouth service of, we're a Christian school and we do this, and you can come if you want. Everybody that we encountered in those years that we were here, from the early years throughout, really walked the walk. They certainly did their best. And not to say they weren't shortcomings, of course there were, but it was always centered and directed towards, this is our best under this direction and with this intent, and that was always refreshing. And the curriculum, when we came, I didn't know what a lot of the classical terminology was. I learned what a syllogism is, and a word that I use frequently now whenever I can. But that was also informative, Greg, as you say.
Thank you, Cathy. Our hope being for our parents now to continue to keep learning in what we're doing as a school, and that we're all in the journey together in trying to do imperfectly what God has called us to do as parents and for our school. But one of the things culturally that we did early on that I still see very much in our fabric and framework is resolving conflict biblically, and how we do that as a community, and that everyone's called to it and responds to it. So I continue to be encouraged by that, even though it's hard work.
It is. I remember, I don't know if this is still a requirement, but for some reason, one of the early years, Don and I were required to attend the Peacemakers course. And that is a skill that I have taken into commercial construction. And of course, I knew it, but it really gave us great tools to use it. And ones, as you say, conflict resolution. It's very clear what your steps are and what they are not. And that's been a great tool that I learned here as well. One thing I want to throw in to what Greg said about the call of the parents and the gifts of sports and music, of which your family is tremendously gifted in, Greg. But there were also some smaller skills that were used. Sewing. There was a whole class in the fourth grade that sewed a bunch of costumes for.
That we still have.
I know you do, because I will see my bedsham paraded across the stage in various productions.
Like, I know that fabric.
That's my sham. But that was so. There were women who sewed, some very advancedly, some who could barely sew a seam. But we toted our sewing machines for months. We did, and our ironing boards, and it was such a uniting, weird, funny skill that we all got behind and enjoyed so much. And I do smile every time I see that sham waved as a flag or as a trumpet or as a shawl or something. Yeah, great. Yeah.
About halfway through our experience at Trinity, I was made aware of, through various studies, of Frederick Douglass's very famous quote, "It is easier to build strong children than to fix broken men." And that was very much in my mindset of how what Trinity is doing is it's building strong children so that it, and as we know, if we train our child up in the way they should go, that they will not depart from it when they are old. It's the same concept of that they know, and they have a rudder, they have clarity, they have structure, they understand how they should act, and so therefore we're building into those children that framework and that understanding, and so that they don't become broken men.
I want to touch on that, Greg. That's an excellent point, and you've said it so eloquently. When I meet parents or encounter parents with younger children, they ask about mine. I say, I love being the parent of young adult children. Number one, it's very freeing, because by the time they're in their early, mid-20s, they either know who they are and they have that structure that you reference and that guiding parameters and boundaries, or they don't. I mean, that window has closed at that point. And I find great relief as a parent of young adults that I know that they have it. And that's not to say they're always using it, but definitely they have it. They definitely have it. And I know that is seeped in them. And I know they hear it in the recesses of their mind in quiet moments. It doesn't mean they always act on it, but I know they have it. And I find great peace in that, and great strength and freedom in that. I don't have to fret and worry as much as perhaps I might, but I do. I find great peace in that.
I'd like to come back to your comment too, and thank you, Cathy, for sharing that, because there is so many unsung heroes that have built the fabric of literally the fabric of the school and such. But I wanted to get back to conflict resolution, because I think that was one of the things. I think as a father of three boys, it's in classes in school of boys at varying levels of maybe parenting skill among those parents. There's bound to be conflict, and so in those situations of conflict, having a school that has the intention of not just saying be nice to each other and kind of glossing over whatever the context was, whatever the effects were, whatever the intentionality of the heart was in that conflict, and just glossing over that and saying, just be kind to each other, versus coming at and uprooting the intentions of the heart and finding out what was the point of conflict and resolving it to a point where either there was agreement or there was agreement to disagree, but at least there was clarity. And I think that was something that is a gift, as you mentioned, Cathy, that you take into life, and saying, there is a way to resolve conflict.
That we're called to do.
Amen.
And that's it makes it very easy to resolve. It doesn't make it pleasant, but it certainly makes it clear what you're supposed to do and how you're to do that.
Our students do take that with them and reflect that back to us. I was curious, just as we're talking about all the things related to our school, I was curious how you see Trinity's mission, and maybe, Greg, this reflects a little bit more of what you were just speaking about, how you see our mission, raising young men and women to pursue virtue, wisdom, purpose, and courage lived out in your children's lives, how you maybe saw it then and even now. And knowing that it's always a process, but how they might have done it when they were younger and now how you're seeing it.
I would say very much. I think the biblical aspect of it, a child that is following Christ is an outgrowth of not only the parents' influence, but also the church's influence, as well as the school. And it's a three-prong approach. And if the parents aren't engaged and the school isn't engaged, then it's a one-prong approach.
Right.
And so you're always in competition. So when we looked at this, model, we said, hey, we have a home court advantage if we have not only we're in a strong church, we're trying to parent as best we can a Christ-centered family, and then we are attending a classical Christian school, that we have an advantage, or we have an opportunity for our children to understand clarity in culture and understand the framework of the founding, the framework of biblical truth, and be able to apply that in their worldview and understand what they're experiencing and how to interact with that, regardless of what it is, regardless of what culture brings. They understand how to interact with it. So I think that the vision of the school, the purpose, and which those two together create the wisdom, and that valuation is ongoing, that they're continuing to walk that out. And even today, an example is I spoke with Grant, our oldest son, and he was sharing, I said, is there one thing that you could tell me about your education at Trinity that was, a pivotal moment? And he said that in his class with Mr. Lee, that he experienced understanding that history is a story, an epic story, and that Jesus is the hero of that story. And he understood contextually that all of history is a story, but yet Jesus is the heroic figure and character of that story. And I feel like that is kind of the accomplishment of what we're doing here at Trinity.
Well said.
Yeah,
very good. I think the reflection on how my children pursued and embodied the mission of Trinity when they were in school, it was often with my foot in their backside, really. It was an uphill battle. No, it was. All the children are different, of course, and some had aspirations to adhere to it or aspire to it in a way that was different than the others, and some just dug in and were doing other things. What can I say? And but as they have gotten older, one of the things that I know has stuck with them is the sense of purpose and how important that is to us at any age. And that is something that they constantly remind themselves and form their decisions. And one hopes that it's a virtuous purpose and a Christ-centered purpose. As young adults, they're making their choices, and I'm grateful that they have the foundation at Trinity that they do and that they got as younger students. But children encounter things differently. Children seek things differently, and as they come into adulthood, that manifests itself differently. But I know the framework, the education, the literal education that they received at Trinity is invaluable, because they still pop off facts that they all went to fancy universities with fancy degrees, but they still quote a lot of their experience at Trinity, specifically the thesis process.
Yes.
It's very, very meaningful and profound in my children's lives. And they still pull back out of the recesses of 4th, 8th, 10th grade facts and positions and truths that they learned in the Trinity curriculum. So, a lot of good things.
Interesting that you say that. It made me think of a conversation my middle daughter had with her father, with Wally, just a while back, and they were discussing something in particular, and Hannah pulled out, "Well, I don't know, Dad, I think that's a false claim, and here's why." And it kind
Not
of
false claim.
He's like, what did we do?
Yeah.
What did we do?
It was
Yeah,
hilarious. But I was curious if you could speak to a current Trinity parents or those considering joining the community. What would you say to them?
One of the things that I would say to early students, Greg, you brought a great point up about the time and the three-prong approach that you have with your children. To young parents, 18 years, 20 years sounds like a long time, and it feels long sometimes. But I promise you, sitting on the other side of that, these are fast years, fast years. And so to have the time with your children that Trinity allows through engagement, both physical and personal engagement, as well as the trust that a parent would have immersing their child in the Trinity curriculum, that is a tremendous advantage against what the world offers, because your children will experience the world. The world comes at your children, and if your children is in an environment that may be counter to what your belief as a family, or what your church believes, the time, 6, 8, 10 hours, if you have sports in a certain setting, you can't win. It's very, very difficult to win against that. It's certainly something to combat. So to have the three-prong approach, it gives you an advantage, a two-prong approach, your family, your school, and then the third prong being your church. It's a tremendous advantage as a parent, because the world will find your kids. Don't worry about them being well-rounded. Oh, they won't be able to interact with children of other experiences. Yes, they will. They will. The world will find them, and they'll do just fine. But you've enriched them with such great foundational truths and experiences and trust in the Lord, and the fact that other people care about them, and that there's goodness in other people, that is very hard to replicate.
I would suggest to anyone that's considering or is currently here at Trinity, for them to engage in every single opportunity and aspect offered by the school. So if you want to come and attend a class, you want to be involved with Trinity U, you want to come and hear our speaker series, you want to just take advantage of everything. Do not miss a vision night. Do not miss a dedication night. Do not miss meet your teacher. Come and be engaged, because then you'll understand what your child is experiencing and how rich that development process is early on, and how foundational it is, and that you will be encouraged too that you're making the right decision. Because there's many things. There will be neighbors, there will be people at church that are saying, why are you doing this? Why are you putting your kid there? And it's, to your point, Cathy, it's like, what about socialization? You know, that's the common complaint against homeschooling. And it's like, well, what greater socialization for people to be able to understand the founding of our country, the biblical foundations for our country, the Judeo-Christian values that we all share, and how that was historically accurate coming forward to this day and age. And so therefore it should be taught in the classroom, and your child should know how to do that and articulate that. And then they become really good citizens. And therefore then they treat their neighbor as they would want to be treated themselves. And so that you have that cultural backdrop in which those people then, those children, those students become good citizens. And so I think that that's really critical. And to new parents, I would say, enjoy the journey, embrace the journey.
Amen.
And don't be afraid. And if you are concerned or you have that, the school is always open to help you understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. And as both of you have shared to this point, that it's not always going to be easy. It's going to come with some bumps. But I appreciate, even from where I sit, hearing from both of you where you sit, and on the side of you've been through it and it's done, that it's worth it.
Picking up on that, if I may, touching back on Liz's comment about conflict resolution, I'm reminded of having been on various sides of conflict resolution as a parent, Greg, as I'm sure you were too, the offending side and the recipient side. And I have to tell you, and I've told this to parents, and my own children have heard me say this many times, even when one of my children was on the offending side of a conflict, I have never experienced leaving those meetings and feeling so loved and reconciled and correct. And I've often marveled at how Liz does it, because those aren't easy conversations. But they're done, and you all leave feeling this is good and everybody's okay, you know, even though there's consequences assigned and whatnot. Of course there are. But I have often, that is a tremendous gift that you have of navigating those difficult conversations. And you've had a few years to practice now with a lot of superstar offenders. But I'm just saying that's a skill, but it teaches everybody we will come to the table, we will address it, and we will reconcile.
We resolve.
We resolve.
things.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we do
Yeah.
resolve. And that is kind. And back to just the kindness and grace of the Lord allowing us to be at this place at 25 years. Now we have a plethora of our team and family members, all of that are a part of that process and can do that process well for our students and one another. So I'm grateful for that being part of the hallmark of our school, because now we have others that have grown up to do the same.
Well, as we close out our time, again, I appreciate the vantage point that each of you have personally, even as I look at my own children, and also for the families who are here. And so as we're in this 25th anniversary celebration, as we look to the future, I just want to know, what excites you? What are you excited about for Trinity, for a place like Trinity? Really, when we're talking about not just the school, but the next generation of students that will come and experience what your family's experienced and experience this type of education for their own families, communities, our country, whatever it is that you could lay the groundwork for. What are you excited for students yet to come and families yet to come and experience Trinity?
There's a famous Ronald Reagan quote in which he says that, and I'm going to probably butcher it, so forgive me, but it has to do with basically that if there's a spark, that if it's lit at just the right time in a young person's life, that it will inform and really lead them on a quest, and that it lights a fire for the rest of their life. And so I think in that's really what Trinity, we're starting a fire. We're starting in a good sense. We're starting a fire in the hearts of young men and women, and giving them just again clarity of truth and understanding what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be a citizen of the United States of America, and what it means to be a world citizen in the sense of an ambassador for Christ amongst the nations. So what does that look like? And it all starts here. And it all starts with education. It all starts with the church. It starts with parents. And that collaboration, that culture of collaboration is what I'm excited about, because I feel like that is kind of the one last best hope that we have for our nation, is to educate our children properly and give them the truth.
And the tools. As
Thank you.
That is what, thank you for what you said, that I'm continue to be hopeful and excited about for what we're doing and for this next generation. As you were saying earlier, Greg, the increasingly secular world that will continue to go the way it's going, how do we prepare? And what we do here, the world will come to them.
Yep.
How do we give them the tools so they are prepared and know what it means to seek a life that will be of virtue, wisdom, purpose, and courage, the good life?
Yeah, Liz, I've often heard you say, we want our students to understand what they believe and why they believe it, and be able to articulate that. Well, I'm here to tell you, my 4 children can do that. I may not always agree with that position, but they can do that.
Yeah.
And I've seen them do that amongst their friends. They frame their conversation that way. And I know that's a direct relationship to the experience they have at Trinity. But if we can think of the next generation, if we can have children and young people who can articulate what they believe and why they believe it, that's a tremendous gift. It's a tremendous skill. And even into our, more mature chronological folks like myself, I still do that. What I believe and why I believe, it's constantly, being refined and sharpened. So I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah. Well, obviously, there's so much more that we could talk about, but for the sake of time, I just want to thank you both again.
Thank you so much for having
being
me.
able to share and being able
Our
to
pleasure.
Always.
Let others know about your experience. And personally, I'm always excited to hear from both of you, because Well, I had the privilege of teaching your kids,
Yeah.
and maybe had a small part in some of who they are and what they're doing. But I will say this, even from where I sit, both of you and your kids had a part in helping me be who I am
Oh,
to
it's
this
lovely.
day and understand those things. And so it really is, when we talk about lifelong learners, we don't just want that for our students. We know that we're all in that together.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you, everybody.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Different by Design. To learn more about Trinity Classical Academy, visit us at trinityclassicalacademy.com. And for more information about our approach to classical Christian education, be sure to check out the conversations over at the Classical Academy podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe and share. Until next time.